Oh, good morning. Good morning. Yeah, I was looking for that elusive ruby-throated croup up in the upper canopy this morning. And hi, welcome to Open Air with Tom Remington, and that be me. I'm just trying to play the part here, with my hat. And but I just, before we get into today's show, I just wanted to let you know I got beat up pretty bad in the last video I did, but from the left. Yeah, and but anyway, a guy left me a comment this morning. Want to know if I had had a stroke because I slurred my words and talked real slow. But I think he just passed it off as ignorance. So if I'm slurring my words and speaking too slow for you, I'm sorry. No, I've not had a stroke. Your judgment as to how stupid I am. But anyway, hey, today's topic is let's see, a pocket warming. Yeah, I decided that we would name global warming pocket warming. Because global warming would indicate that, the entire globe was warming, right? So, but that's not the case. So what we have is we have pockets of warming, and those pockets seem to be quite convenient depending upon the political climate more than the atmospheric climate that's going on. And case in point, I was... if you hear all kinds of strange noises, it's the wind outside. It's howling this morning, and everything's rattling and banging here. My office is on one corner of my house here. So anyway, John Heinraker over at Powerline blog had an interesting article today about, it was about global warming and moose in Minnesota. And I've followed this story a little bit, and I've actually written about it a couple of times, I believe, in my blog. And it's, there seems to be a decline in the moose population in Minnesota. And, boy, authorities there are just completely puzzled as to what it could be. But they've tended to just pass it off as global warming. Now, before I get into this, let me just explain a little bit about, my position on global warming. I believe that there is climate change. There's always climate change going on. Some of it very localized, some of it widespread. I believe that climate has changed since the beginning of time, and that climate will continue to change unless things come to an abrupt halt here at some point in time. And golly, you never know, do you? But I don't buy into the theory of man-made global warming. In other words, that when I fart, burp, hiccup, burn gas, run in my car, whatever that I do, it builds up in the atmosphere, which causes things to warm up, et cetera, et cetera. I don't buy into that. I think the climate change is very natural, and if you look at history, you'll find that there's always been changes in, where moose live, where they don't live, and that sort of thing. But in Minnesota, authorities, they pass it off as global warming. And this global warming, which they claimed has just shot up dramatically, which has killed off all these moose, Heinraker points out in his article at his Powerline blog that the information that he got shows that the average year-round temperature in that area has increased a 0.5 degree Fahrenheit in the last 50 years. Now, we've heard tell, some of us have heard tell how sensitive moose are to heat. They don't like heat, and they don't. They're a cold climate animal. And Minnesota, along with, right across the northern tier of states into New England and New York and upper peninsula of Michigan, Minnesota right across the way is the lower fringe of the natural, or at least in this, period of time. And those I would guess that as climate changes, the moose will, migrate north and south and, expand, and they may grow some depending on conditions, et cetera, et cetera. But to just come out and say, well, the moose are disappearing because of global warming, might not be an accurate statement, if at all even close. I also wrote recently, and you can go to the blog and find that out, Ed Bangs, our taxpayer-funded wildlife biologist for the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, recently stated that the decline in the moose population in the Yellowstone National Park area was due to what he called a climate disruption. Whatever that is. I guess that's just another catch-all phrase for climate change, climate disruption, whatever you want to call it. But it's interesting that this theory about the now, I'm not saying there aren't climate changes going on in Yellowstone that might not be going on in, let's say, Colorado or Utah or something, but the global warming thing just doesn't quite cut it. And because if it did, wouldn't we be seeing the same incidences of decline in moose in nearby areas? I mean, that would make sense if it was a case of global climate change or global warming as such. Bangs says that that the wolves there have nothing to do with the decline of moose. It's all climate. But it's interesting because in Colorado, it's quoted as saying, and Heinrich brings this out in his blog. He points out to all these states that have these increasing moose populations in them. Colorado being one of them, which is seeing a significantly growing population of moose. Utah is increasing so much so that they're going to up the number of permits that they issue on cow moose so they can, tone that population growth back a little bit. And the population is also growing in Oregon and Washington. Now, this is kind of regional, and both, Colorado, Utah, they're not real far from Yellowstone Park, and their moose populations are growing. And back in Minnesota, just, Wisconsin, the population is growing. The Upper Peninsula of Michigan, it's growing. All these places are growing, and there only seems to be maybe a couple of populations where they're decreasing, and that's Minnesota and the Yellowstone National Park, which coincidentally happens to have wolves, but can't be that. Anyway, so this global warming thing isn't real convenient when you look at the truth and the facts of this, because logic would tell you, well, it can't be a global warming, so it must be a pocket warming. So let's coin the phrase pocket warming, which is a result of man-made global warming, which is just, wreaking havoc. So we need to probably shut down Yellowstone, keep people out of there so that they don't affect the climate. And let's get rid of all the people around this area of Michigan that are upsetting the pocket warming there, and give the moose a chance to grow. Anyway, that's my rant for today. You go out and have yourself a nice day, and we'll see you next time on Open Air with Tom Remington.